Let me introduce this by telling you that this is an interview I did a number of years ago for a new book. I thought my publicist had arranged it with a Christian radio network. It was actually a secular network, and the host was a famous Beverly Hills psychiatrist who had been quoted by who's who of the secular media. She apparently had a listening audience of about 20 million, and it didn't dawn on me that it was a secular network until about 3 minutes into it, when she strongly disagreed with me about the issue of abortion. Get ready for a spirited interview. I hope you enjoy this.
To today's edition of Dr. Carol's Couch, I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carol Lieberman. My guest today is Ray Comfort. His latest book is called Hitler, God, and the Bible. But what's particularly interesting is how he got to this and his journey when he started asking people about Hitler. And he has incredible statistics about how university students in Germany and in the United States all over weren't able to recognize Hitler's picture, didn't know. There's one young man, he said, do you know who Adolf Hitler is? And he said, is he a movie star or something? I mean, wow. This is really scary, folks. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Who is the author of that quote, those who are doomed?
A very memorable man whose name slips me at the moment.
Well, it's a good quote in any case.
Yes, those who forget history are destined to repeat it, and it's such a great truth.
Yes.
And that's what we see happening in our nation at the moment. When I was doing research for the book, I decided I'd tell the publishers that I'd give them a video called Hitler's Religion. So I went out into the universities with my camera, and I asked people who Adolf Hitler was, and they came back horrified because they had 14 people on camera who didn't know who Adolf Hitler was, as you said. And that really concerned me. I thought, this is crazy. And then I decided I'd put them in a moral dilemma, because when I was studying the Holocaust, I came across a horrific incident where the Nazis shot 300 Jews in a pit and then buried some of them while they were still alive with bulldozers. And so I put people in a moral dilemma and said, at the point of a Nazi gun, would you bury Jews alive in a bulldozer? And people said, no, I could never do that. And I say, why is it? Because you value human life? And they'd say, yes. I'd say, well, what do you think about abortion? And they'd say, oh, it's a woman's choice. I'd say, do you think it's a baby in the womb? And they'd say, yes. So then I asked them one question that caused them to a complete change of mind, from being adamantly pro-abortion, being pro-life, in a matter of seconds because of this one question. So we came back to the studio, saw we had these 8 people changing their minds about abortion, and realized we didn't have a video called Hitler's Religion. We had a pro-life video, so we put it on a website called 180movie.com. And it's in 4 months had 2.4 million views.
Okay, well, you know, I really don't think we should go into the abortion issue, because obviously you and I disagree.
Okay.
I think it is a woman's choice. So I would.
Hey, why don't we just talk about it for a minute? It's healthy to discuss this, and I'd just like to find out why you think that.
Well, as a psychiatrist, I have seen the damage both to the woman and to the children who were born who were not wanted. The damage to the woman's life, who did not want a child for multiple reasons, and the damage to the child who was born to a mother who did not want them.
Do you think it's a baby in the womb?
At a certain time it is. It isn't at the beginning.
What point does it become a baby?
Well, I can't remember right now, like 5 weeks or so. There's some point at which it has a heartbeat, and at that point is when, and I think that's around 5 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. It's about 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
Finish the sentence for me, Carol.
When?
It's okay to kill a baby in the womb. When?
Before. Well, I mean, I can't say, I'm not going to say that it's just okay before 5 weeks, if that's what you're getting at.
No, they kill babies right up to about 19, 20 weeks. So there's really no justification for killing a baby. Just have it adopted. I think it's a wonderful thing. There are people waiting to have them adopted. You don't kill a baby because it's going to inconvenience your life. And we have multitudes of people changing their minds about abortion just from watching 180movie.com. It's a free video, 2.4 million views.
I watched the trailer for that movie, which I thought was great, the trailer. I didn't know that the movie was online, but in any case, the trailer, which mainly has you asking the students, who was Adolf Hitler, I thought was fabulous. I had no clue, quite frankly, that it had anything to do with abortion, because that's not in the trailer, or if it was, I missed it.
There's two trailers. There's one that shows 8 people, university students, changing their mind about abortion.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I think it's just so cool that people are open-minded to receive extra information.
As a physician who went through OBGYN and, before I became a psychiatrist, and being a psychiatrist for many years, I have enough information. So you're not going to change my mind on this. So I think we should move on to what I thought we were going to be talking about today.
Talking about the Holocaust, Carol. I hadn't finished what I was saying. So it's great that people can change their minds when they get extra information. Because when someone says, I'm not changing my mind about something, they're not open-minded. They're a bigot. They're closed-minded. So that's why it's wonderful that these kids in university could change their mind about different issues. Closed-mindedness is horrible. We've got to be tolerant of people. We've got to let people express their thoughts and have a free exchange of ideas, because this is America. It's not some Middle East country where they're oppressed and not allowed to give free ideas. That's healthy to talk about things, so it's good to be open-minded.
Yes, it is. So if the students didn't know, as obviously they didn't, who Adolf Hitler was, it certainly was important that you told them. So now could we get on to that, please?
That's what I'm on to.
Okay.
Mandatory Holocaust education is only in 5 states in the U.S. 45 states don't have it. So it seems that 45 states are dropping the ball when it comes to educating people about one of the most darkest periods of human history, and that was Hitler's Holocaust.
I mean, that statistic alone is shocking. I mean, if people are supposed to, I wouldn't have even thought that you would have needed a mandate that it's obligatory to teach the Holocaust if you're teaching history, and it's hard to believe that this is occurring in America. So why do what's happening in these other states that aren't mandated?
Well, what they're teaching kids is theories about evolution. I don't know if you realize Hitler was a great advocate of Charles Darwin, who spoke of, in Origin of Species, of the survival of the fittest. It's not called survival of the fittest any longer. It's called natural selection. But survival of the fittest is easy to trace back to Hitler. This is what Darwin said. Allowing the weak members of civilized society to propagate their kind leads to the degeneration of a domestic race. Hardly anyone is so ignorant as to allow his worst animals to breed. That's what Darwin said. Hitler picks it up in Mein Kampf by saying, if nature does not wish that weaker individuals should mate with the stronger, she wishes even less that a superior race should intermingle with an inferior one. So what Hitler did was put Darwinian evolution into practice, kill off the weaker members of community, those he considered to be weaker, such as Jews, blacks, gypsies, and homosexuals, and let the strongest survive. And that's what we see happening in our nation. You ask most kids that come out of university, do you think you're a primate? They say, absolutely. They're convinced they're primates. They don't see themselves as having any moral absolutes, saying it's wrong to kill. And that's why we have a generation that has no concern or regard for human life.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. Are you saying you're saying that humans aren't primates? What do you mean?
Of course they're not primates. We're made in the image of God with a moral compass of right and wrong.
I have a feeling I should have...
Now, this is healthy, too. It's not making you feel uncomfortable. Let's talk about evolution for a few moments.
This is really not what was...
It's what the book's about. Did you read the book?
That's not what... you have a publicist, and I received his press release. Adolf Who, new book exposes Hitler's best-kept secret, okay?
And what's the name of the book?
What?
What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is Hitler, God, and the Bible.
So I should be able to talk about God and the Bible, because that's what I do in the book. And in the book I say there's no scientific evidence for evolution. It's a theory.
Look, this is not good. This is not what I thought we were going to talk about. This is not what your press release says, and I don't want to talk about this on my show. I do not want to give airtime to this. I'm sorry. I believe in Darwin. We are primates. And, if you don't want to talk about Hitler, then maybe we should discontinue this
I want to talk about Hitler, Carol. I want to talk about what he believed and why he killed off so many people. And I want to talk about how he embraced evolution. This is history. This can be substantiated.
There were things in the press release that I was particularly interested in.
Let's give it a try.
All right. First of all, it says... when you were doing this video, did you also go to Germany? Because it said 1 in 5 young Germans has no idea that Auschwitz was a Nazi death camp, a poll released showed. Although 90% of those asked did know it was a concentration camp, the poll for yesterday's edition of Stern News magazine revealed that Auschwitz meant nothing to 21% of 18 to 29-year-olds. So do you want to talk about that?
Well, there's nothing much to say because I've got a whole stack of stuff to say, but you're censoring me.
Well, no, I don't want to talk about Darwin. I don't want to talk about abortion. I wanted to talk about your research into Hitler and his motives for killing the Jews.
I can tell you his motives for killing the Jews.
Okay.
But you might stop me while I'm talking about it. I'm not going to mention evolution. I'm not going to talk about Darwinism, but it's of great interest.
You said that there were theories.
Yeah.
That there have been theories about why he did this, and I thought that those were interesting.
I'll give them to you now, and I won't mention abortion, and I won't mention evolution. Can you handle that?
Go ahead.
As I was researching for the book, I thought I'd uncover why Hitler hated and killed so many Jews. And all I got was theories. All I got was perhaps he had syphilis from a Jewish prostitute. Maybe he was jealous of the Jews, of their ability to make money during the Depression in Germany. Or perhaps he was bitter because his paintings were rejected by an art school in Vienna, and the art school had on their board mainly Jews. And I couldn't find anything concrete. It was all theory. It was maybe, perhaps, could have. And I thought, that doesn't justify the killing of 6 million Jews. I can imagine somebody being bitter enough to go out and kill a Jew because they were, angry. Maybe a 6-member Jewish family, maybe 60 people at a stretch, but 6,000 people? Or what about 6 million, which Hitler killed? So I thought there must be an incendiary incentive, something that motivated him to do so.
Okay.
And I discovered on the 26th of April, 1938, Hitler mandated by law that all Jews would disclose their wealth in detail. That every Jew had to list exactly what he was worth, what he owned, and what they're actually doing. And this was mandated with a threat of a 10-year hard labor prison sentence if they didn't do it. What they're actually doing was signing their death warrant when they filled out that form, because when Nazis arrived at the home of a Jewish family, they knew who they wanted and what they wanted. They knew who owned jewelry, who owned paintings, how much was in bank accounts, how much their insurance policies were worth, etc. So when Hitler killed a Jewish family, and when he killed a whole family, there's no one left to complain. When he killed a family, he got their house, he got their car, he got their savings, he got their paintings, he got their insurance policy, their bonds, he got the gold out of their teeth, the jewelry, the hair off their head, and the clothes off their back. So he made billions through killing Jewish families. So the love of money still is the root of all evil. And 30% of the war machine was paid for by the blood of the Jews, Carol, believe it or not.
That's interesting.
And I believe that was his incendiary incentive. That's what motivated him. And it wasn't just because he was bitter because he had syphilis, which nobody really knows.
Well, now, apparently he was, after his parents died, and he didn't really have a good job. I mean, he wanted to be an artist, right?
That was his desire. He was an artist, and he was a reasonably good artist. He was a baby kisser at the beginning of his political career. If you know what you're doing as a politician, you should get your photo taken outside a church building with a robed minister holding onto a shrink-wrapped Bible. Go to a prayer breakfast, say something about God, and then perhaps throw a few Bible verses in your speeches. And that's how you deceive the hearts of the simple, and that's exactly what Hitler did. He had a very dominant father who used to beat him a lot. His mum died when he was a young boy. I think he was 12 years old, and his father died also. And then he became almost a starving artist, he was in Vienna. Went through a very hard time. Then he got involved in the First World War, and when the war broke out, Hitler said this: I sank down on my knees and thanked heaven out of the fullness of my heart for the favor of having been permitted to live at such a time as this. He thanked heaven when the First World War broke out because he loved war. He used to play war games as a kid. He was actually a war hero in the First World War, got involved in politics, and then rose to power because he was such a fine speaker. You may have seen clips of him raving in German. You think, what a crazy fanatic. But if you look at the English translation, he was offering himself as a savior to Germany because they were in such a political strife. They were deeply in debt because of reparations leveled at them from the Treaty of Versailles. They were blamed for the First World War, 40% unemployment rate. So Hitler was saying, I'm going to give you back full employment, which he did. He was saying, I'm going to restore the glory back to Germany. And so we look back in history through the eyes of the swastika and what it stands for us. But when the swastika arose in the early 30s and Hitler spoke to vast millions, the godly man that he made out that he was. He hated the God of the Bible, called him a tyrant, hated the Ten Commandments, created 12 of his own, created his own New Testament, had 100,000 copies printed, changed Jesus from being a Jew to being an Aryan, imprisoned pastors that spoke up against him, put in his own Nazi pastors, replaced the cross with a swastika, and replaced the Bible with a Mein Kampf. And he killed off anybody who disagreed with him. He was totally intolerant and didn't like knowledge at all. He burned books, believe it or not.
It's so interesting because this much hate does come from early on, you know, and yes, it's known that he had his father. That he had such turmoil with his father, you know, the first authority figure, actually, from the time that he was a little boy.
You know, a lot of people have a problem with a dad that, you know, is an authoritative figure and dominant, but they don't go out and kill 6 million Jews.
Yes.
So a lot of people make it through a difficult child, even without a father, without a mother sometimes, but they turn out normal. But Hitler was especially was very insecure. He was given ultimate power, which we should never, ever do. And that's why it's such a tragedy that so many in today's generation repeat history if we don't know about it. We should never give any human being supreme authority, especially when they're like Hitler. Hitler was what's known as an idolater. He created a god in his own image, and that god didn't have a moral dictate, so he could go out and kill because the God that he believed in didn't say you shall not kill. It was a dumb idol that didn't have a moral dictate. Make sense?
Yes, yes.
And I was an idolater years ago myself. I used to pray to a God of my own creation, a God of my mind that didn't exist.
Well, I was going to ask, yes, I did want you to sort of give a little background of yourself and how you came to be in. And also, I've read two different places about your religion. So could you sort of go back and kind of tell us where you're coming from?
Let me briefly jump in here and say I couldn't believe what she had just asked me to do, especially in the light of what we'd already been talking about. So, here we go again. Hold on.
Yeah, certainly, if you don't mind. I'm Jewish by birth. My mum was a full Jew. My grandparents or great-grandparents came from Poland. They fled Poland in the late 1800s and went to England, changed the name to a Gentile name, then emigrated to New Zealand. That's why I've got a very slight accent. And my mom married a Gentile. She was kicked out of her family of 11 children because of that. And when I was born after the Second World War, they put Gentile, Methodist on my birth certificate because they were afraid of another Holocaust. And so I was raised without any instruction about God, neither Jewish nor Gentile religion. I was just left to do my own thing. Started thinking at the age of about 20 years old, why am I part of the ultimate statistic? Why did 10 out of 10 people die? And I had no idea why I was going to lose everything I loved. It was going to be ripped from my hands by this big thing called death that nobody wanted to talk about. And I remember looking at my wife. I was lying on the bed, we'd just been married, beautiful wife, and I just started weeping. She was asleep at the thought that she could be snatched into death at any incident, any moment, and it made no sense to me. Even though I was very, very happy, I had my own business at the age of 20 and completely liquid financially. And then a guy explained to me the reason we die, and I hope this doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, Carol.
Ask the experts. Call toll-free right now, 1-866-472-5787. And ask our All-Star team to answer your question. That's 1-866-472-5787.
Thank you for calling.
VoiceAmerica.com.
And welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carol Lieberman, with my guest, Ray Comfort, who was just about to tell us about death. When some technical problem happened and he got disconnected and I thought I was disconnected, and in any case, all of you must have been thinking we both hung up on each other since we disagreed with so many things. But I promise you, I did not hang up. I was very interested to hear what you had to say about you were saying before the break, so to speak. I mean, it was so ironic that we're talking about death and then everything goes dead. But you were saying about how were looking at your beautiful wife and you started to cry because you realized that at some point she would die.
Yeah, and life didn't make sense to me. Every day 150,000 people die, so I thought, well, no one wants to talk about this. No one's got an answer. I'll just see if the medical profession has got an answer. So I went to see a doctor to see how I could stay healthy. Walked into his office, and he was sitting there looking like death warmed up, sucking on a cigarette. And I thought, well, there's no help there. And science was too worried about that time about putting a man upon the moon to be worried about why people die on Earth. And so I just gave up. And 6 months later, I was on a surfing trip, and a young guy explained to me the biblical reason we die is because we've broken an eternal law, we've sinned against God and broken His commandments. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not a bad person, I'm okay. And then I looked at one Bible verse that just pinned me against the wall. And this is what it was, Carol. And this is it. It's from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, whoever looks at a woman and lusts for her has committed adultery already with her in his heart. And I thought, boy, if that's the standard of Judgment Day, I'm in big trouble. And because I did that 1,000 times a day like every red-blooded guy. And when I looked at the commandments, I thought, boy, I'm going to be guilty on Judgment Day, end up in hell. And this young guy explained to me that Christ died on the cross taking my punishment. We broke God's law. Jesus paid our fine. That means God can legally dismiss our case. And so I repented and trusted Christ and became a Christian 40 years ago on the 25th of April this year, and haven't looked back. And it's so wonderful knowing I've got everlasting life and not having any fear of death and knowing what's going to happen after death. And that's one of the main reasons I produced the book. It's a quality read. It's a quality book. It's interesting. It's historically accurate. And it just contains the information I've shared with you, which you were very gracious to allow me to share. So I really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, how did your mother your Jewish mother take to you?
Great question. Yeah, she was horrified. Absolutely horrified. But she wasn't a committed Jew. She just, over the years, she got to appreciate it, and she'd come and hear me speak, and so did my dad, because I speak for a living in different places around the country. So they did accept me, which is wonderful.
There is some thought that she may have gotten this woman, the mother of Hitler's father, in other words, had worked as a housekeeper for a Jewish family in Graz, and there's some thought that the family's 19-year-old son, Leopold Frankenberger, may have actually been the real father of Hitler's father. He looks relatively innocent, I mean, as all babies do, really. And then when you see him grown up, you know, there's his eyes. I mean, there's this meanness, this malevolence in his eyes that really, speak to whatever happened to him between being a baby and then, between the homelessness and the revolting against his father and just apparently a lot of other things. But yes, it is really hard still, no matter how much trauma he endured, to imagine somebody being that twisted, that traumatized, that twisted, to be able to kill 11 million people. It really does defy, the understanding.
It doesn't with me, because I look at things differently than you. This is how I look at things. Are you ready?
Yes.
I see human beings not as good. I see every one of us as being evil.
Ah,
that's the difference.
There we go. There we go. There's a basic disagreement. Okay.
Now, if you disagree with me, tonight I'd like you to leave your door unlocked to your house, leave your car unlocked, and leave your purse on the sidewalk during the night, because you believe in the goodness of humanity.
I do believe in the goodness of humanity, but the thing is that
why do you lock your door at night?
Because when these people are born with this general goodness and innocence and so on, and traumatic things happen to them throughout their life, whether it's things growing up with their parents and their family, or things at school, or things when they get older in society, it's things like bullying, when they're going to school growing up, but more things as they grow up. I mean, the world affects some people who are more vulnerable in these ways that take them away from this innocent, good, inherent state to feeling defensive and protective and feeling like if they don't, protect themselves, that all these other evil people are going to get them.
Carol, how many people were murdered in the U.S. during the 1990s? Have you any idea?
I don't have a statistic for you, no.
I have one.
Yes?
200,000.
Okay.
Think how many people attend the Super Bowl, and then you've got double or 3 times that amount. That's how many people were killed just in the U.S. via murder. They're the ones who were caught. You had rape and greed and all these things,
yes.
The bullying, and human beings aren't good. We're sinful. We're all sinful.
My! How can you live with yourself thinking that? I mean, how would you not be super super, well, I mean, I guess you take your depression and you divert it into writing books and speaking and so on. But then what is your goal in writing books and speaking? If you think that people are inherently evil, how are you going to change them, or what are you going to do for them?
That's a really good question. Okay, are you a sport? Are you a good sport?
I like to think that sometimes.
Okay, let me just ask you a few questions, and you be as honest as you can with me, okay?
Mm-hmm. And the 20 million people who are listening, go ahead.
Do you think you're a good person?
Yes.
How many lies do you think you've told in your life? Just take a stab, an estimate.
I've had to have told, yes. Everybody, you have to tell white lies. You tell the dog ate my homework and all that kind of stuff.
How many do you think? 10, 20, 100?
I don't know. I can't give you an answer.
So you lost count.
There we go.
Okay, so what do you call someone who tells lies? Come on, you can do it. I've done it myself.
A liar, yes.
Okay, now have you ever stolen something in your whole life, even if it's small? Come on. You're on the couch, Carol.
Listen,
4 questions.
I'm not perfect. I am not perfect.
There's 4 questions, okay? 4 questions.
Go ahead.
Have you used God's name in vain?
Yes.
I just heard you use it on the radio before.
Okay, yes.
And then, have you ever looked with lust at someone in your whole life?
Yeah, as much as possible.
Okay, now here's a quick summation, okay?
I'm a liar, thief.
Yeah, that's a liar, a thief, a blasphemer, and an adulterate heart. So what we're looking at is your standard of goodness is very low, God's is very high.
We're talking about two different things. The point, I'm not saying I am not perfect. Nobody is perfect. That yes, if you're going to say there's nobody who's perfect or who never does these things, but that's very different from what you were saying, or at least what I understood you to be saying, that people are inherently evil. That's not the case.
Well, let me justify it with this thought, okay? When God says good, he means moral perfection in thought, word, and deed. God says lying, blasphemy, theft, adultery, even of the heart, is evil. God's standards are much higher than ours, and that's the perspective I'm taking. By man's standard, I think you're a good person, I'm a good person. Hitler would have thought he was a good person. But by God's standard, there's nobody's good.
No, I disagree with that. No.
What do you disagree with?
Because I don't believe that God has those kinds of standards. I think God understands. He's watching us all the time. He understands the context of everything. He doesn't think we're all... could you imagine if God thought we were all inherently... what he created was inherently evil? I mean, how do you connect those two?
Well, let's back up. What do you think God thinks about Adolf Hitler?
I think he thinks that he's terrible.
Evil?
Yes. These people don't just grow like topsy and like, well, I mean, I don't know. You could kind of argue about that. There are some people who are born with more of a disposition towards evil, let's say. But for the most part, the people who do bad things, I don't believe that anybody is inherently evil for the most part. I mean, again, there are some people who have tendencies towards being a psychopath when they're born because of genetics and so on, and of course environment. But here we go with the break. But I do not believe that anyone is born evil or inherently evil.
Not even Hitler.
No, I don't think he was born inherently evil, no. I think it was he may well have had a predisposition to it, but it was what happened to him when he was growing up that turned him into this monster. All right, we need to take a break. This is definitely one of my more lively shows. You're listening to Dr. Carol's Couch. My guest is Ray Comfort. Not very much of a comfort to me, Ray.
Hitler, God, and the Bible is now available in a paperback series of 3 books. Hitler, God and the Bible, The Beatles, God and the Bible, and Einstein, God and the Bible. The 3-book series is available at a low cost at livingwaters.com. Real quick, here are 3 things to help you grow in your faith. The Living Waters podcast, the Evidence Study Bible, 200 of the most commonly asked questions of the Christian faith, and much more. The Starter Kit, 4 of the most popular gospel tracks, available at livingwaters.com. If you enjoy a good sword fight, you're going to love this video. I thought I was going to get beaten up at one point, so you can watch it right now by clicking up to your left.